Hi, this is Roy Samuelson. Welcome to the ADNA Presents. Today's conversation goes way beyond audio description. It is tapping into one of the most urgent questions of our AI age. How do we know it's real anymore? So today's guest is Dr. Tanusree Sharma. She is an assistant professor at Penn State. And what I love about this conversation is how she builds frameworks for answering some of our toughest questions when it comes to voice cloning, when it comes to media literacy, and how audio description itself is the language of empathy, and how that authenticity can be worked through in a digital AI world. So enjoy this part one conversation. Can't wait to hear what you think. Welcome to the ADNA Presents. This is Roy Samuelson. Today we have Tanusree Sharma. She is an assistant professor at Pennsylvania State University. Before joining Penn State, she earned her PhD at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Her research sits at the intersection of security and artificial intelligence with a focus on a key question. How do we build tools that verify the authenticity of people and their trustworthiness of the data they share in digital platforms? Can't wait for this conversation. She aims to design secure systems that enable at-risk populations to interact safely within increasingly AI-driven environments. I'm so thankful that you're joining us. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I listened to some of your podcasts. So it's really an honor for me to be here and a part of the dialogue.
Thanks for saying so. Let's start out. My favorite question is what you love about audio description.
Okay. So I can really answer the questions from two different hats as me, Tanusree, or as a researcher. So let me start personal first. I grew up loving Japanese anime. And for me, I'd say anime has always been something around sound, the subtle background score, the intensity of this whispered monologue, and then pause in the dialogue. So all this kind of really fascinating to me, even before I fully understand the plot or the storyline. And in anime, I think, for me, the audio is just an add-on. It's an art where, the emotions that it conveys through this audio even more than through the images that I see in the anime. So I would say, well-crafted, audio description for me isn't just a substitutions for sight. It's kind of a language. As a researcher, if I have to say, eventually when I started working with blind and low vision people, I really began to understand audio description from a quite whole different perspective. For many blind and low vision people, you already might have known that audio is not just a secondary option. It's a primary way for them to experience images, videos, and even stories, movies, things like that. And everything from this tone, from pacing, from the emotional quality, it's become the part of how they perceive the meaning. So audio description, which traditionally kind of focused on narrating what's the visually happening there, but it cannot just be that static or I would say clinical, rather than it's kind of a dynamic perspective. It's not just maintaining the accessibility, rather than it's a dynamic of conveying a context, scene, and even now in the age of AI, there's a new need. Like, can audio description help convey the trust of content people are consuming every day? And I would like you to kind of think this from the sighted user's point of view. You see icon, let's say in a YouTube, in the icon says this is AI-generated video or audio. And that visual cue doesn't really exist for blind and low vision people. So what they are picking up is what has been described in the alt text or alternative text, right? And they also feel from the voice if this is real or AI. And is it sound too forced? Or does it sound too flat, too robotics? And that's become their signal, which means this description is kind of shift from the reactive description to proactive storytelling. So that's how I see, audio description is not just filling the gap, it's curating their experience. And in research point of view, I kind of think this as a sound first media literacy, where the quality of audio and the description actually signals how trustworthy the content is. And that's really powerful for many communities. And for me as a researcher and also as an anime fan, so I would say the audio description is so much more than accessibility. It's just how we build empathy and meaning through this voice.
It's wonderful. I love that your perspective from your own personal experience with anime into the research of experiencing the story. With that dynamic approach, you do include context and how that builds trust. Right. This is research, that you are framing this in the sense of research. And there's been other studies that have come out, and in the work that I've done as a performance coach on the voiceover side, in my own personal approaches, both with blind and low vision performers as well as blind and low vision audiences, that approach of making sure that the audience is immersed in the story is yet another aspect of a position of discrimination that's put into our blind audiences, in the sense that a sighted person can be moved to tears watching a scene where a blind person does have the clinical experience, but it's like there's that distance, that gap. It's a different kind of gap.
Exactly. Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's not just anymore confined to specific type of entertainment, specific type of media. It's kind of everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's on daily YouTube, in daily TikTok, Instagram, or the movie they are watching in, Netflix. Everything's kind of compounded right now. And also this problem is not just for blind community anymore. It's for everyone. So I would say the more I dig into this, the more I realize that it's not just about the people who are listening. It's kind of about the people behind the voice. And one of them is voice professional, voice artists like you, the one behind these audiobooks, the cartoons, video games, and I would say e-learning courses, you name it, a lot of different avenue. And these folks are often, I would say, the unsung heroes, the media that we consume every day. And now we're facing a future where I would say their voice can be cloned without consent very easily. And that's how, lately my work's been expanding, looking at how AI is just not impacting not just the consumer, but also the creators. And what I have learned from this is that you cannot really tackle this problem, the AI questions that we talk about in every space in our life now, just to look at one specific group. It's all connected, the users, the creators, and even the builders who build these AI models and other technologies. So this is some of the conversation I have with my research community most of the time. If we want to get it right, we have to think about everyone in this ecosystem rather than just focusing on one component of it.
When you think about guiding the conversation on the synthetic voice side, whether that is a clone, a replicant, or a generated voice that is synthetic, when we talk about getting it right, if I could take one brief step back, thinking about e-learning and TikTok specifically, that those are also visual content. And I see a distinction between anime and storytelling and adventures and fiction, and even some nonfiction where there's a story with characters, that there is a heart and emotions that are happening on screen. I want to contrast that to e-learning or TikTok, where it's just getting the information out. Is there a space for that?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched in very, very important point. Before I go into that, maybe it's kind of important to give a little bit of understanding of all these different type of cloning or the AI problem that we're talking about. So, there are mainly three ways when we say we solve the problems. The three ways we tackle it. One is called global detection, which means that you figure out in an entire clip is fake or not. It's kind of binary, if this is AI or this is human. And then second thing is local detection, which means that you zoom into to find out part of the clip is fake or not. And the third thing we talked about recently, I think researchers are focusing more onto this topic right now is traceability, which means that you are tracking where that fake audio might have come from. So if I take all this perspective into context, now if I have to talk about, YouTube and TikTok, there are different type of consumption is happening. In the YouTube, you might have seen a part of contributions from primary contributor who might have been creating these different videos or audios from their voices. In TikTok, you can also see another type of contributor, secondary contributor, who are kind of taking out some of the voices from online and maybe creating some mismatch to create a reel of it. So now this kind of complicate the whole area. Primary contributor, secondary contributor, and maybe there is the source contributor who is a voice actor. This is really interesting to think about the layer of complexity it has, and something in my current research I'm very much thinking about and still trying to understand how do we really get a framework for both contributors and industry to look at and assess the risk that might come in near future. So yeah, that's something I can point out to you on that perspective.
I love it. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I'm really appreciating in your work is guiding the conversation. That this
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to do. It's not just I, as a privacy and security researcher, all this problem, I cannot really think alone from my perspective. That's why I'm trying to have this collaboration expanded with speech technologists, regulatory bodies, and the community of voice actors to understand the problem from different perspectives, multi-stakeholders' point of view, and to pinpoint what exactly the problem that we're tackling with without overemphasizing sometime or sometime maybe de-emphasizing something. So I'm trying to understand all perspective to start with, and hopefully we can get there.
It's really great to hear how you're getting there. The work that you're doing by start in the aspect that we're talking about on the voiceover side, that there's a real curiosity that you bring that is not coming across as defensive or accusatory, or also all embracing, that you're coming from a place of wonder of how does this work for you? Have you found that kind of approach opens up conversations on the research side to things that maybe others might miss?
This is an interesting question again, and that's where I see a lot of overlapping concept and interest, which we haven't really leveraged before. To give you an example, let's say I, as a privacy and security researcher in our community, we kind of have one of the concept called imposing cost. And this imposing cost means, I don't mean charging people money, but I mean like making it harder, slower, and riskier for someone to do something harmful. So as you said, that I'm not really looking in this problem from, oh, this is bad. You should not do that. You should not work with text-to-speech industry. Rather than I'm trying to understand what are the real risks, what is the hypothetical, and maybe something long-tailed risk in 5 to 10 years. So let me give you an analogy here. So when you put a lock, let's say, on your door, you're not really saying that no one can break in. Rather than you're saying, hey, if you try to break in, it's going to take more time, right? And more effort, and you might get caught. And that's the imposing cost in cybersecurity area, And it doesn't mean that attacks is impossible, harmful activities are impossible, but it makes them not worth it for many people to do something harmful to others. And if you think this in context of voice, then voice is shockingly easy to steal and fake in current world. And all it takes is like few seconds you're speaking and maybe from a podcast like this or a voicemail or a
Are you
TikTok.
real? Is this AI? Is this synthetic voice?
Right. And someone with the, right tool, they can generate a fake version of yourself. And, it can be used for impersonating you or scam your family or access to your bank or say things that you have never said. So how do you use this imposed cost in voice where different community can be vulnerable? Not just voice actors, it can be average people or even industry who are in good faith working with voice actors, right? And there are many industries like that. You start by adding friction then, according to an imposing cost. For example, requiring consent before a company can use your voice. That's one of the friction. Then you can embed watermark, not just beep sound, rather than the resilient watermark, so that you can trace where it comes from. And then third, you can build better deepfake detection tools. Currently, the tools are not, it's kind of lagging behind, but you need a detection tools in, hardware system like phone. If you get a phone call, can you detect it? That is a human or AI. And fourth, you have these laws and regulations, which making it illegal for someone's voice to use without permissions. So all of these things make it more expensive, not necessarily in dollars, but in effort and risk for some bad actors or someone to misuse your voice. And that's what I mean by, imposing cost. And that's how we can borrow different concept from different domain to adapt and really build our proactive tools to set some measures so that we can do our job as it is and also have some extent of, security and privacy along the way. And that's how I see voice privacy and voice workers can go a long way.
You're taking down a lot of silos. There's a lot of ways that each individual that touch whether it's a voice actor that is signing a contract or it's a startup synthetic voice company that is looking to develop whatever they're developing. When you talk about consent and watermarks and laws and regulations, could we take a brief pause and go back to what you said about global and local detection, the three tackles that we were talking earlier? And can you help distinguish our audience the difference between global and local detection?
Yeah, for global detection, as I said, it's just giving you a binary result of an entire clip. Is it a human or is it AI? Mainly perhaps based on a single source of features, maybe acoustic signal. And then the local detection is that, you have an entire clip and you want to zoom into a particular place of the clip and to demonstrate if it's a fake or real. I can think of in a voice actor context, let's say you worked with a producing house on project and then the project is done. You already gave the project. You got your credit and compensation. But few months later, the company realized that there are few places or sentences they need to make very small changes. And they don't want to contact you anymore and maybe just use some pickup voices or some words. And then, which means that, the whole clip, you have certain places there is a pickup. Then how do you detect those pickup if this is AI or human? So that's what I meant by local detections and global detections.
Thank you for explaining that. You also talked about traceability. I'm getting the sense that you are looking at this from a really beautiful big picture, and you are taking into consideration the many different perspectives and roles. If you were to look at what a win-win for everyone looks like, what would that look like?
Very interesting. If I have to say win-win, we always want to have this win-win. However, we can always need to make some. All right. So maybe what I can do, take you back to 10 years. So, when this first data set was created, Libre speech, where a lot of different volunteers and contributors contributed their voice. And those voices are instrumental in the development of speech technologies that we're using today, which is, voice assistant tools like Siri, Alexa. And then everyone was happy at the time, right? And yet, after this decade later, now, the same contribution have exposed voice actors to a range of risk. And we didn't really anticipate this risk. So I would say the thinking of the win-win situation is also very temporal. The risk that we haven't really thought of in 10 years back, the risk currently exists.
Thanks for listening to this part one of the two-part episode with Dr. Tanusree Sharma. Tune in next week.